So what are we talking about today, guys? We're talking about your chain jumping off and then it jumping off again and again and again. There's reasons this happens and I'm going to show you how to avoid it. Hey y'all, thanks for tuning back into Chickanic. I hope everybody's having a great week. Today we are going over something that I know a ton of you already know about, but there is a ton of you that don't. Why do I know this? Because I had customers come in all the time with this issue, and I know exactly how to fix it. But before we get into today's video, if you're a fan of saving time, money, and frustration while fixing your own small engine equipment while watching in-depth tutorials, you've come to the right place because that's what I do. I upload a couple times a week, and if that sounds interesting, hit that like button, smash that subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, and please leave a comment. I love to read through the comments, and I will reply to all the early commenters. So what are we talking about today, guys? We're talking about your chain jumping off and then it jumping off again and again and again. And you thinking, what is going on? They must have sold me a bad chain. And I had a ton of customers come in who thought that I sold them a bad chain because it would not stay on their chainsaw. But the truth is, the chain itself had nothing to do with it. There's reasons this happens, and I'm going to show you how to avoid it. Now for this demonstration, I have a customer's MS211 steel chainsaw with an 18-inch bar. This comes with a 3/8 low chain, and he didn't bring it in for chain-related issues. I just thought this would be a good example because although it does happen on the larger saws, you do not see it that often on them. Now, any chain can jump off when it hits something in a tree, a rock, a nail, something like that. It is common. But the smaller chainsaws, I see it quite frequently whenever somebody has bought a brand new chainsaw and they're just not very familiar with them, or they bought a brand new chain. And although they think they installed it correctly, they might not know the next steps. Now this saw already has a chain that's been used on it. It's still actually almost brand new, but it is used. It is at the perfect tension when I pull up on it. You can get about 3 of these drivers up above the bar, which is perfect. It's not drooping. And when you give it the slide test, slides through fine, doesn't make any weird sounds around the clutch and the sprocket. This one is on perfect. Now, although a chain can pop off at any time, the majority of the time it's when somebody puts a brand new chain on. So I want to put a brand new chain on this. Let's go cut one. And a little shop update. We got all the frame done around the entire wall. We are already starting on electrical, but we still can't organize. That's why I still got a pile of stuff sitting in the middle of the shop. So to cut a chain, I've got to get to my chain cutting table, which is right there. That's good enough. I am not going to move that, but I got my roll of 3/8 low chain here. That's our chain sharpener. This is the chain breaker, and that's the chain riveter. And this is measured correctly. It's what we use to see how many links of chain we need to get to where we put our cut in. And I know this thing looks scary because every time you drag a chain over it, the more and more you do it, the more and more you rip it. I do have a new one right here that I'm going to put on after I get this all cleaned up and everything organized. So let's cut a chain. Oh wait, I need my block so I can break it. It's over there somewhere. Gotta find it. Well, that was 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back, but I found it. All right, so I've got my chain lined out here. Got it on my measuring part. Now this particular saw is 61 drivers, so you can see 60's right there, 61's right here. So I want this driver right here, so I'm going to cut right behind that one. So we know this is the one that needs to be cut. Tighten it up in there. Came out a little bit. Tighten back down. There we go. So when I buy a chain in 100-foot rolls like this, it comes with these links for me to put it back together. Do you want to make sure you have your teeth on the outside when you create a chain? We did mess with some people and cut chains and put them back together with the teeth all on the inside, and it was pretty funny. It's a good practical joke. Okay, tighten that down. We might shake a little bit here. I like to do one just a little bit and then tighten the second one completely down and then come back to that first one. Still haven't found my handle. And we're good. All right, so I've got my new chain now. I'm gonna go ahead and pop it on here. I do not put chains on with the chainsaw sitting on its side. It seems much more difficult to do it that way. Go ahead and loosen it up. Now all chains that you replace are gonna end up being a lot smaller because chains stretch. All chains stretch. Now the better brand chains do not stretch as much as the cheaper chains, but they all stretch. So you'll have to bring your chain adjuster back quite a ways to get that new chain on. So go ahead and do it right now. Make sure your teeth are facing forward. So once you got your chain on and your side cover on, you're going to want to tighten your nut down, but do not tighten it too tight to where the bar cannot slide forwards and backwards. So just enough to where it's not going to slide off its chain adjuster or such. While you have it at this point, just to make sure everything's in its groove, go ahead and give it a spin. Everything sounds good. Now we're still a little loose here, even though I was pretty tight on it. But I'm going to pull the bar up. Anytime you're putting on a chain, pull your bar up and you're going to tighten until it gets just to the bottom there. That's the easiest way to put a chain on it at the correct tension is do this. Just hold it up, make sure that's in the bottom, because it's going to actually tighten it more when you tighten this nut down. We'll pull up. Perfect. We got our 3 drivers above the bar. We know we're at the perfect tension. So we should be able to go fire this baby up and cut a limb, right? No, you don't. Let me show you what happens right after we start it up. Okay, so as I do this, I want to try to do it all in one take so you know that I'm not BSing you, that it actually does this, and this is the reason your chain's jumping off. I still have it at the same tension I just had it when it was in there. If you pull it, I've got 3 drivers that is poking out above the bar. That way you know it's at the perfect tension. I'm gonna go start it up and rev it a few times, see what it does. All right, just in those few little revs that I didn't even cut anything. See if I can get this up where you can see it. Look at how far the chain is hanging off the bottom of the saw. That's how loose it got just from them few revs, and it will get a bunch looser the first cut you do. So before you even go to cutting, give it a few revs and let's tighten it up. So why does it pop off even if it gets a little loose? That's because most of the time people are using these smaller saws to cut limbs, and a lot of limbs, they have very small twigs and branches that are like this size or this size. And if you cut something this, I tell everybody, make sure it's at least bigger than a finger, and you preferably larger, but definitely bigger than one of your fingers. Because if you're cutting something this small, it doesn't cut it, it rips it into the saw and gets, usually if the chain is hanging down below the bar, it will get in between the chain and bar and pop off like that. Okay, so now you've watched the video, you know what you need to do in the beginning, you make your cuts. Are you needing to adjust it again after a few minutes? Most of the time, yes. If you've got a brand new chain on there, it's going to continue to stretch a little bit. A lot of times once the chain's broke in a little bit, you're not going to have the issues as much as when it's first new, but you're going to have to constantly check it while you're cutting when it's a brand new chain. All right, so your chain pops off. You put it back on and then it immediately pops off again. Then you got issues, because 90% of the time when your chain pops off, it destroys your drivers. Now, when it pops off, it slings around and hits the bottom of the chainsaw. So they'll have a chain catcher on here, like this steel one. It's built into the side cover, so it's part of the plastic. And I've seen these completely worn off from chains hopping off so many times. But most of them will have a metal bracket sticking out here. The Husqvarnas, they have the metal bracket. Some of the Echo ones are pretty cool because they have a roller, black roller that's right here, and so when it hits it, it sort of, you know, gives it a little leeway there, and it's replaceable. Also the metal chain catchers, they're replaceable. This is not such a good design because once you wear it out, you have to have another side cover unless you know, want to get hit with your chain. For example, this is a chain catcher on a larger steel chainsaw, and it's been hit and starting to go up like this. That's one thing you need to watch for. You don't want it to get too high, and this happens a lot on all models. If it starts coming off and hitting it and making it keep going up, your chain could get barely loose and hit it for no reason. So always keep an eye on your chain catcher. And to show you on this Echo CS4910, this is the roller chain catcher. You see it spins, which I think is a lot cooler. Everybody needs to do that. Now, why does it keep jumping off after it jumped off the first time? That's because when it rolls around and hits that chain catcher or the bottom of the saw, where it runs in the saw, these are the drivers, they sling around and hit the bottom end of the saw, and these will mushroom out on you. So it doesn't matter what you do, how many times you try to put it back in there. A lot of times they won't fit back into the bar at all, but every time it comes around, it's going to catch that tip of the bar back by the sprocket, and it's going to make it pop off again. And this is where you got to decide what's more important, your time or your money. If your money's more important to you, you got to fix the chain that you got, because chains these days can be 20 to 30 bucks. So what I used to do at the shop, because I had a ton of power tools, I had a belt sander, and I would actually lay the drivers where they were boogered up, lay them along the edge of my belt sander and get it done that way. And you have to do both sides of it. Now you could do it with, you know, hand power tools if you have that, or you can go old school and use a flat file. This is very time consuming. And that is rule number one. Well, you always want to have a backup chain, because the last thing you want to do when you're in the middle of the woods trying to cut is to stop and file down drivers on your chain. So guys, thanks again for tuning into Chickanic. If you haven't found me at Facebook, find me at facebook.com/Chickanic. Find me on Instagram at TheRealChickanic, or find me at Chickanic.com, where you get your own t-shirts, hoodies, and long sleeve shirts. Thanks guys, and have a great day.